Now we're going to get to dive into a really great conversation, one that I like to highlight. We heard two great case studies yesterday, Galveston and New Braunfels. We heard some solutions being discussed for big urban markets. But this is an interesting one because it's fresh. This is Glynn County, Georgia. Glynn County, Georgia just really sort of wrapped up. They're on the tail end of a lengthy discussion about how to create policy, but I think they did things so well. And a lot of that is due to the three fellows who are joining us here today. So I'm going to introduce them just real quick, but we have with us Commissioner Peter Murphy of Glynn County, Georgia. Scott McQuaid, the president and CEO of the Golden Isles Convention Visitors Bureau, the CVB and DMO for Glynn County. And Chris Michael, the general manager of Hodnett Cooper Vacation Rentals, a vacation rental manager, and really got the vacation rental community organized there so that they could be part of the discussion with the county and with the DMO. So welcome, fellas. We really do appreciate you guys spending some time with us. We've got a lot of participants from different corners of the country, a lot of destination towns like yourself, destination counties, and just like you, who would love to hear about what you guys went through. So with that, let me just ask a couple of quick snapshot questions, and I'll start with you, Commissioner. We really appreciate you having the time here. Of all the different issues that you discussed while you were commissioner, where did this one line up? Was this a challenging one for you?
Good afternoon, Matt. Thank you for having us. I would say it was challenging. It's certainly not for the faint-hearted. It took me a while to sort of bring my level of knowledge up to speed to be able to articulate it appropriately, not only to my constituents, but also to my fellow commissioners. Turns out down in Glynn County, there's actually been an effort to create a short-term rental ordinance since about 2010. So my term began January 1, 2017, and it was one of the tougher ones, but you know, in this day and age, any sort of change is going to be tough, no matter where you are in the country.
You know, I mean, that's not unusual, and I think it's good for the other folks who are watching today just to hear. I mean, it's challenging, and it is one that goes on in many communities for a long, long time. There's so many nuances to the issue, and it's such an evolving industry. So, and also evolving travel trends. So, yeah, no, I think it's good for everybody to hear that they're not alone in facing the challenges. But you certainly did it, and you led a great discussion. One of the guys that worked with you on that is Scott McQuaid, the head of your Convention Visitors Bureau. Scott, you came from a destination market. Remind me which one you came from.
Yes, thanks, Matt. And it's great to be with you today. Prior to coming to the Golden Isles of Georgia, I was in Telluride, Colorado for about 6 years.
Beautiful. So, you know, you've obviously worked with issues to different, cities and counties during your years as a travel leader. Would you also say, was this a challenging discussion?
Yeah, having done this twice in two different destinations, I would say it was much easier in Telluride because the issue hadn't risen to the degree of prominence that it is now. So when we attempted it here in Glynn County most recently, short-term rentals are on everyone's radar screen. So it involves a very large cross-section of the community. You have the homeowners who are very interested. You have the tourism industry that's very interested. And you also have the residents that are very involved. So the process was much more involved here. And I think that's also why we were successful, because it was very inclusive.
And Chris, thanks so much for joining us. You're a vacation rental manager there in Glynn County. And you're also a real estate professional. You do more than just vacation rentals. Prior to this, did you ever have any reason to get fully engaged with policymaking with the commission or with any kind of city council or anything like that? Did you ever done anything like this before?
I appreciate you having me as well, Matt. No, being in this community for 14 years, I've been involved with the CVB for some time, and we try to stay close, being in a small town, to what's happening in our community. But this would have been probably my first real experience in a varied sense with the number of different stakeholders that we had. typically we would have a group that's all focused on the same thing. And with the short-term rental ordinance, what I thought was real interesting was just getting together all the stakeholders on people that had differing opinions on what we should do and how we should implement it.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're a great symbol for the vacation rental managers who are watching us. I think just like with Scott and with the commissioner, these are folks who would love to know that it's not an impossible conversation to have. And you certainly dived into it, and you were very involved in that. I think that helped with the outcome. Did you see other vacation rental managers or vacation rental owners get engaged with the conversation to the degree that you did?
We did, and so just to back up and kind of our process, thanks to Peter, as he mentioned, we've been working on this in one way, shape, or form for the better part of 10 years. And historically, the way it's been handled is whoever is in the county government at the time feels like they could fix it for us and just kind of runs with it. And we were given an opportunity to bring a group together that included county officials, homeowners, vacation rental managers, real estate professionals, as well as homeowners that had real problems with vacation rentals and I don't want to say didn't want them in their community, but really felt like they needed to be regulated in some sense. So from that perspective, it was extremely helpful to have such a diverse group that wasn't just vacation rental managers that all of us might have one train of thought, but the other group that really had a problem with vacation rentals in the past.
Yeah, that's great. So Peter, Commissioner, you helped get that conversation going. You helped get that process started. Where did it all start? I know it started 10 years ago, but with the new iteration of it, where did it all really start to begin so that you guys could get to a place where you're creating an ordinance?
Well, as I suggested earlier, Matt, it started with my education, recognizing that this was a significant problem. That began back in the calendar year 2016 when I was running for office. And during that time had over 70 individual meetings with various citizens of my district, which includes Sea Island, St. Simons, and Jekyll, and became aware, as Chris was saying, of the concerns of homeowners, primarily as to what was going on in the neighborhoods, and it was essentially unregulated at the time. And then as time went on, really, getting a grip on how the scope of the problem. And Scott used the term degree of prominence. Well, let me set the stage for that. We have, speaking specifically to St. Simons Island, because Jekyll already, it's a state-owned property, and they already have a very well-regulated short-term rental program over there. On our island, we've got 17,000 people, about probably 7,500 to 8,000 housing units. And it's been said by consultants we work with, upwards of 1,500 to 2,500 rental units at any time listed on the various short-term rental platforms on St. Simons alone. So we're talking about 10 to 20% of the housing stock that is at one point being offered for rent, which is a significant issue and a significant challenge. So in order to create the awareness of the issue, I started just having discussions with we have a 6-day-a-week newspaper and a one time a week newspaper, discussing it with them, going on the local talk radio, discussing that. At our county work sessions, we had several meetings to discuss the issue. But what I did in my district, I initiated a policy of quarterly town halls where we had between 150 and 400 people at any one time. And I began the conversation there about short-term rentals and the needs and the challenges. And, along with people like Chris and particularly Scott McQuaid, who'd had the previous experience, we were able to bring together groups to really hammer it out. And as I mentioned, it wasn't all just, love and goodwill. It's not for the faint-hearted, and it takes some persistence and listening and compromise, but also education, Scott, not to give you, Matt, not to give you too big a shout out, but one of the turning points for us was a group of 5 of us from Glenn County to come to your seminar last year down in Austin, Texas. We had Chris, Scott, myself, our county attorney, and our assistant county manager. The day we spent down with you and your conference, I think, was one of the turning points of getting something really hammered out in our county.
Oh, I appreciate that, and I don't mind the shout out. But you guys truly did. I mean, I give a lot of credit to different communities, and Glenn County is one of the very best examples, if not the best example, of just what you said: education, compromise, and persistence. I mean, you guys kept working at trying to learn these different elements of what goes into creating the ordinance, and also what goes into addressing the needs and the demands and the desires of the community. So you'd mentioned the housing stock issue. Were you also hearing a lot of concern about the other issues that we tend to hear a lot about: noise, parking, trash, occupancy?
All of that and more, Matt. My biggest concerns really started with safety, because it really is an unregulated industry. And here we are having people move into homes, where we're not sure if they have smoke alarms, fire extinguishers, appropriate in egress during emergencies. We do hear from the neighbors about noise, trash, cars. Those are the big issues that motivated me. But then mentioning the numbers of rentals we've seen across the various platforms, it's a huge financial industry. And again, these are businesses, and absent regulation, we really don't know that everybody's compliant to all the above issues that I just mentioned. So those were all boxes we needed to check off to make sure that they were all addressed in a comprehensive ordinance that we were focusing on writing.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, and that there really are. There's a lot of different issues that are important to the community, and it's great that you captured all of those. And you also had some great staff working with you. The attorney, your county attorney, Aaron. Correct?
Aaron Mumford was very engaged in this, and again, going back to what we learned from attending your seminar and what I've said throughout, my tenure, and I've chosen not to run, so my tenure will be over in 2 weeks. So I'm glad we got this buttoned up. But we're not here to reinvent the wheel. I mean, others have done this. Let's look at best practices across the country. So working with people like you, Matt, and Aaron Mumford, reaching out to other counties across and cities across the state of Georgia to see what they've done, and working with third-party consultants, others that have created a body of ordinance work in other communities. That's the way to get it done. Not to start it's not a zero-based budgeting process. You need to start from somewhere further down the road, utilizing the experience and the creativity and the accomplishments of other communities. And we were very willing to do that, along with County Attorney Mumford, but also County Manager Assistant County Manager Catherine Downs, who attended the seminar with us, and the 2 gentlemen we're sitting here with, Chris and his Hodnett Cooper company put together a working group of many, as Chris has said, realtors, private owners, people who've been impacted in the neighborhoods, and had several meaningful sessions that really, again, advanced us towards success. And maybe Chris could speak to that aspect of it, because he was intimately involved in that.
Yeah. And Chris, I'd love to ask you about that. Tell us a little bit about you forming that working group and, bringing everybody, all those different voices together.
Yeah, so the initial, I guess, the kickstart to that was the commissioners agreed to do a meeting with our local board of realtors, where it was just an FYI session, and Peter kind of walked through what the intent was behind it. And then there was a commitment from the county that they wanted to work with those of us that were experts and do this for a living, but also involve the people that don't do this and are impacted by it. So we really tried to find a group that wasn't so lopsided. I mean, it's a little difficult to try to get ordinary citizens to volunteer into a group that had problems with it and really kind of air their grievances about the vacation rental industry. But we were lucky here in our community in that we had a couple property managers that all they do is vacation rentals, like myself. We had a couple that are realtors that sell and then also do vacation rentals. We had a couple owners that have their own property and just do VRBO, and kind of what they experience, since it's not their profession, it's kind of a side job for them. And then those owners that really had problems with it. And our meetings really kind of started, okay, we're talking noise, trash, and parking, and the ways to fix it were everything from do nothing to craft an entire new ordinance. So going through that process, which I want to say we met 9 times over the course of 12 to 13 months, basically an hour and a half at a time, running through those, providing our feedback back to the county, and in particular to Aaron Mumford to craft an ordinance that I think in the end is, extremely workable. It's a fair compromise. Nobody got everything they wanted. And I really think it's going to make a huge impact as it goes into effect here in our county in the beginning of the second quarter of 2021.
That's great. One of the things that you guys did is you dove into it issue by issue. Like you said, noise, parking, trash, occupancy, and the other issues. Peter had mentioned looking at the accomplishments of other cities and counties, and that's an important word I picked up on, and I think only somebody as well spoken as Peter would use it, because it is truly the accomplishments. There are so many examples out there of other cities or counties that have adopted ordinances, but they don't achieve compliance. They don't work. So, you want to capture what worked. When you were with the working group, was it hard to find any kind of single ordinance example out there in the country that was stellar that you just wanted to model yourself after, or did you have to just pick and choose?
I want to say, me personally, I think I read through maybe 5 different area ordinances. Scott and Peter, you guys may have gone through a lot more. I know Aaron, our county attorney, had a ton. But no, we definitely did not find one that we said, wow, this is perfect. Let's just use this and wrap it up and we can use it here locally. Would you agree with that, Peter?
Yeah, I would. I think it was a pick and choose rather than just sort of a rubber stamp, just grab, cut and paste somebody else's work. But it's important also to recognize, as Chris and I are speaking, that how important Scott McQuaid was the process as well. Scott was engaged every step of the way, pushing behind the scenes and taking time to meet with all of us, the working group that Chris and his firm put together. And I think maybe Scott could just I tried to impress upon your audience how many homes are involved. It's a big deal down here, but I wonder if Scott could take just a second and speak to how big the tourism industry just in Glenn County, but specifically St. Simons is in Glenn County's day-to-day life.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'll take the opportunity to just locate people geographically. Although we're in Glenn County, we're known as the Golden Isles. That's our brand name, our regional name. We're located midway between Jacksonville, Florida, and Savannah. We're a coastal destination. I have to give this plug, Matt, because your previous mayor did. We were just ranked the world's best island destination by Travel and Leisure. So sorry, forgive me. I'm a DMO leader, and that's what I do. But we have about a $1.6 billion a year tourist economy. We have 3.8 million overnight visitors that come here every year. As far as our bed base, that we count both pillows and units. We have about 30,000 pillows in the whole area within the county. 10,000 of those pillows are located on St. Simons. the largest growth of our accommodations base has been in the private rental field. So when we look at revenues from bed tax collections, the private rental industry has really grown tremendously. If we went back in time, say 8 years ago, it probably made up about 10% of the total revenue coming from St. Simon's. It's now about 50-50 between that and hotel rooms. So it was imperative that we come up with a way to level the playing field. Of course, there are folks that play by the rules and folks that don't. And although our bed tax ordinance does create a policy for providing bed taxes, that was one of the primary concerns for the CVB, is that there was a leaky bucket, but also an uneven playing field for the rest of the industry. So that's why it was really important to us. And, you know, as I look at our process, as Peter mentioned, it's kind of fitting, Matt, that you have me in the middle of this picture up on the screen, because that really was my role personally. Is Chris was leading the charge with the committee work, Peter was leading the charge with the county work, and I acted as the glue between to keep those two things going back and forth, and became the advocate. But we couldn't get this done, I have to say, without having a champion. And I just commend Commissioner Murphy, because he was the champion to get it done for us. And I would also note that both Chris and Commissioner Murphy sit on the CVB board. So we're all on the same team, and we are all educating ourselves and going through the process together. And that made it so much more easy.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. Now, so tell us a little bit more about tourism there. Prior to COVID, what was tourism? What was kind of your mix of tourism prior to COVID, and has it been impacted since COVID?
Yeah, so gosh, we were setting ourselves up to have just another record year. The tourism industry has grown over 50% here as a whole in the last 10 years. So we've had major growth, revenue growth, we've had unit development growth, a lot of new hotels, a lot of private rentals, a lot of home sales have been put into the rental market. And everything was going about as good as it could be. We went from 95% occupancy roughly prior to COVID to obviously falling down that trough that everyone did in the industry. But, you know, I will say that we performed much better coming out. Our summer was really good comparison to the industry. We were down, but only down slightly. A lot of our occupancy was down by choice, but our rate has not fallen. And believe it or not, year to date, our fiscal year to date, July through October, we're actually 3.8% ahead of last year on bed tax collections. A lot of that increase is actually being driven by the fall and summer market in the vacation rental industry. We've seen visitors migrate from hotel rooms to really seeking out vacation rentals and seeking out that product and staying longer.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. We have a lot of destinations that have seen an increase in vacation rental stays during COVID. People can still celebrate the isolation, you know, social distance while staying in a vacation rental that other accommodations don't offer. You know, they don't have the shared communal space and that sort of thing. Chris, would you say that that's true for you as a vacation rental manager? You know, some of our audience, this is of interest to them. We heard some numbers over the last 2 days of significant spikes in vacation rental use. And I think in our next session, we're going to be talking a little bit more about some of that data. But would you say that that's true of your work, that you saw an increase in vacation rental use?
Most definitely. I mean, like everyone, you know, April fell off to virtually zero. We had a handful of just monthly guests that remained, and then May was fairly flat. And then starting in June, you know, and I've talked to some other destinations that had a similar experience. It was busier than we've ever seen it, and it was very last minute as well. So we're very fortunate in our area and with the mix of inventory that we have to provide those homes. But yeah, it was a very good summer, very good fall. And now we're starting to see the impact now. A lot of our winter guests that typically would travel to us for, January, February, March, first quarter of next year. We're not seeing that business back. And my guess is that'll be another year before we get that.
Right. Now, we did talk yesterday. This was an interesting conversation about safety protocols and cleaning in the COVID era. We had a session where we had Claire Reiswerg. You might know Claire, Chris. She's a vacation rental manager and a very active leader in the vacation rental space nationally. And we were talking about the VRMA, Vacation Rental Management Association, and vacation rental housekeeping professionals came together to put together a list of cleaning and safety protocols. So for our listeners, even though we're looking at the end, hopefully, of the COVID era, but for the next few months until we are past that, if our listeners do want to look at the Vacation Rental Management Association website, VRMA, you're looking for the VRHP, cleaning and safety protocols. Those were put in place and seem to be very helpful to many policymakers and travel leaders. One thing I did want to ask about, though, just jumping back to you for a quick second, Scott, was it understood by several, a big issue that we face in a lot of communities is a lot of folks think if we restrict vacation rental access, people will just otherwise stay at a hotel. The problem is so much of the data shows that a hotel guest tends to only stay for a certain amount of time. A vacation rental guest tends to stay much longer. The national average is, it probably doesn't apply specifically to Glenn County, but the national average is 1.1 nights in a hotel. The national average for a vacation rental is 4.5. So a very different length of stay. Also, the number of guests is significantly different. So we like to say it's a different type of travel for a different type of traveler. But often the issue is local folks, policymakers, people engaged in the discussion don't know that. Now you're in a vacation destination. Do you think people were aware that there is a difference between the type of guest and the type of demand between a hotel and a vacation rental?
Yeah, I think there was a pretty good awareness of what the landscape looks like. I think that people are probably taken by surprise at how quickly it grew over the last many years. But vacation rentals have really been a part of the mix here for a very long time. So they're pretty familiar with the landscape and what need they serve. I would say that we haven't always been on an agreement of whether we should regulate them or what we should do about them because the community wasn't educated about it. We've here in the Golden Isles, we've learned both what you should and shouldn't do. When you hear us referring, we've been at this for 10 years. We learned that, that we shouldn't necessarily try to embark on this process without having the right education and looking at best practices. At some of our past attempts, we had commissioners thinking that they could help write the ordinance or, just people teaming up in small circles. And we realized that that does not work. And we're very fortunate to have Commissioner Murphy do the outreach, and that process did work. So we educated the community with us. And I would say, through that process, there's a much better understanding of, what the vacation rental landscape looks like. And I would say, and I'll let Commissioner Murphy respond. I know not everyone was thrilled by this idea, but I have to say, by the time we were done our work, the committee agreed on probably 96% of the items. There was only one gotcha of this registry and whether or not we're able to track the addresses and where they live, because there's a nuance within the Georgia law that says you're not allowed to have a rental registry. So that was the only thing that really tripped us up. For the most part, by the time we were finished our work through education, the pitchforks went away for the most part and the resistance stopped. But again, Peter was the one on the front lines of that, so he might know better. if we pulled everyone along with us.
What do you think, Peter?
I think Scott's exactly right. I think a couple of the constituents started out from the position of let's just get rid of it all. Other communities have done that. And, it was such a prolific business within our community. I just felt that that was not going to happen. That was not my purpose. That was not our goal. And it took several meetings with some of the property owners and managers to get them to believe me. I mean, for a while, the word was out that Murphy was trying to eliminate all short-term rentals. And I made it clear from the get-go, we weren't going to do that. We were looking to create a balanced ordinance that would deal with these issues. And one of the, again, going back to the meeting we attended in Austin, I had the pleasure of having a lunch the day before our meeting with Jeff Hurst, the president CEO of VRMA. Just happens to be a friend of my daughter who lives in the Austin area. We had a great working lunch, and he was encouraging us, which surprised me at the time. Get the ordinances written, get control of this, get the process going so that it makes sense. And the fear is that if you don't do that, it turns into such an onerous situation that hoteliers and private citizens and others start going to the state legislature and wanting to ban it in certain regions. So actually they have from afar been looking over our shoulder at our ordinances. And every once in a while I've heard from their government relations persons, hey, you guys are right on track. You're doing a great job. But as Scott mentioned, there is this aspect of Georgia law that's a bit of a peculiarity about not having a registry of rental properties. And so the workaround there was we've always required, an accommodation license number. And so that is the way we're able to at least understand who owns the properties and where the properties are, because without the capacity to understand who you're dealing with, you have no ability to audit, do a blind audit. We're not talking about knocking on people's doors and walking through to make sure they have the number of fire alarms and extinguishers, but just simply audit and make sure that we're doing our due diligence in terms of assuring that we're collecting the appropriate taxes that are due the county. Nobody wants their taxes raised. Nobody wants the millage rate raised. But I think there's a feeling across that people want those that are required to pay the tax to be compliant. And that's, the third leg of our ordinance effort is to make sure we're deriving the appropriate revenue stream for the county that can be applied to other necessary projects going forward.
That's a great way to kind of start winding this conversation down. That's beautiful. I do have to say, Commissioner, we're sad to see you step down as a commissioner. You've done a phenomenal job. And at some point, as we continue to hold these smart city policy summits, the short-term rental conferences, I'm going to start giving out awards, and we would certainly award you as a policymaker in this space. You've done a remarkable job. You were, as you said earlier, focused on education, compromise, and persistence. And that persistence part is a real problem because it is tough. You hear so much, there's so much noise in this space, and you were really focused on continuing to work at getting it right. And we all owe you a debt of gratitude for doing this very well. And for the audience, Glenn County can be viewed as a best practice. You guys have done the process well, and you have crafted a good ordinance.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Matt.
Oh, of course. And Scott McQuaid, as a DMO leader, the same goes for you. I've been a part of the U.S. Travel Association conferences, the Destinations International conferences. You are a stellar destination leader, and the community owes you a debt of gratitude. As I continue to split these conferences that I'm doing here up into 3 different groups for the destination community, I think we definitely owe you a debt of gratitude for helping to craft this ordinance. You certainly have done this very well. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Chris, the Vacation Rental Management Association, the vacation rental community, same thing. I mean, you've done this incredibly well, and so thank you. And I will get to a place where I'm actually giving out best practice awards, and I don't want to do it virtually, so we're gonna have to wait until we're back together live in person, because I really honestly can't stand continuing to do things by Zoom. I want to be able to shake your hands and see you guys, and I'm sure everybody who's watching wants to do the same. So thank you guys for that. Fellas, just in one last quick snapshot round for the three of you, if you had to give our audience a little bit of guidance on this, what would be your, just last couple of words? And I'll start with you, Chris, and I'll work my way back up to the commissioner.
Yeah, so my advice would be bring together that diverse group of stakeholders. Don't just pull your vacation rental managers or the one government employee. Pull together the opposite side of the equation on this, and people that are really having problems with it or having issues, get them to the table to find that middle ground. That was really our huge win in this, is getting those different stakeholders on the same page.
That's great. Scott?
Yeah, from my perspective, I would say if you're interested in undertaking this effort, you need to become the advocate and then find yourself a champion, and then follow best practices, and you'll get to the other side.
That's great. And then Peter, we'll leave the last word with you.
Very good. Thanks, Matt. I think, again, as I started out, education, whoever the champion is, the one that's on the city council, the county council, they need to have a firm grasp of all the issues, because if you don't, you're going to be decimated. And as Chris said, bring along all the stakeholders, and they include the people who sell the properties that are going to become rental units, the people that manage those properties, the neighbors, but also, as you pointed out, Matt, and I thank you for it, bring along your county manager, assistant county manager, and your county attorney. And lastly, be persistent, because it can be done. There are going to be some highs, there'll be a lot of lows, but listening to everybody and working to a common goal, it's very doable.
That's great. Well, thank you to the three of you, and we can't appreciate you enough for your time. And fellas, this is the awkward time where that if we were in a audience, you'd be hearing a loud round of applause and people would be standing up. But unfortunately, with Zoom, all we do is camera off. So I'll let you guys, as you want, to camera off and log off. But thank you very much for your time today. And just know if the whole audience was with you, I'm sure they'd be giving you a loud round of applause.